Like, I want to get down to y'all's level and kind of just teach this thing. Is that cool with y'all? Like, the soldiers are used to this, but like, I feel like for a topic like this, you don't need somebody bullhorning at y'all. All right? Now, don't get me wrong. Holy Spirit's going to do what Holy Spirit's going to do, so I might get up a couple times. You guys know how that kind of thing rolls. And so, here's the deal, okay? For this Moral Revolution series, there's no other way that you can really start this thing out than with what I'm basically going to start out with today. And today, it's going to be on purity, but I titled it something because, to be honest with you guys, I didn't come up with the title till yesterday on my way home. I'm not going to lie to y'all. But I feel like it's so fitting because of the way it's been presented kind of before. It's been presented in this way called, how many of you guys have ever heard the term the talk, right? How many of you guys have ever had the talk with your parents? Some of y'all, see, that's the thing I learned. See, my boy, Isaiah's looking like, bro, I had the talk. I had 3 talks. Which one you talking about? Here's the point, is that, man, what I've learned is that, to keep it real, either you've had the talk, like, in a terrible way, or, man, you've maybe, like, never even had the talk. And so, today I want to title the message, A Talk in a Way You've Never Heard It Before. And so, the reason why I wanted to even, talk about this is because, oh, by the way, I'm talking about sexual purity. I'm just going to come out the gate with it, all right? This is what we're talking about today. Cat's out of the bag. It is what it is. And so, who yeah. All right, through that, this is encouraged. But, like, there's so many different, like, connotations in the way people deal with this topic. And, like, there's so many different things. Like, so the world, they're talking about it with everything they got. They're saying stuff out of context. They're mentioning sex a lot, and they're the ones you may hear it from the most, but they're not really saying a whole lot of truth. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Right? They're saying a lot about it, and that's probably where you hear about sex the most, because, the church doesn't really talk about it. Right? They either try to demonize you, right? Make you feel like you're a terrible person for, having the desire to have sex, right? Or, they just don't talk about it at all. So you feel like if you have these desires, then, it's kind of weird. I'm kind of an outlier, right? Little did you know that everybody's, secretly thinking this, and so then, everything else is everything else. Here's the deal, right? Then you have the parents, right? And they give you what's called the talk, right? Where they basically just say, and here's the talk, by the way. How many of you guys, the talk was this? Don't date. All right, talk's over. Right? Hey, don't have sex. Talk's over. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like, man, like, when it comes down to it, you need a lot more than that, right? And a lot of times, I hate to say this, okay? And I know I'm going to be on tape. They're going to get me for this. But a lot of times, they tell you don't date, the church tells you don't date because they don't really know what to do. They don't actually know, like how to explain it. And a lot of times, they don't know why, because it's what they were taught, to just say don't date, because they were taught don't date when they were growing up, right? And so, man, today, I'm going to talk about it in a way you guys may have never heard it before, because I'm not going to actually give you guys points today. I'm going to give you guys lies today. I'm going to talk to you guys today about 4 lies that every teenage Christian believes about sex. Okay? And here's the first one. I'm going to come right out the gate with this thing. It says, man, there's something wrong with you if you want to have sex. How many of you guys know that's one of the biggest lies maybe of all time? So what happens is you think to yourself, but no, that's what we do at church. We go, man, we can't say the S word, bro. Like, what's up, right? And then what happens is you feel like a demon or you feel like, man, if I was righteous, if I really had a good relationship with God, I wouldn't have these desires. That's not what God said. Look what he says right here. How many of you guys understand that, man, you guys got the desire to have sex from God? Look what he says right here. You guys have probably heard this one before. Look, God says, be fruitful and multiply. Bro, that's in the first chapter. Like, look, it says 1 on there. That means, if you think about it, bro, not only was it God's idea, he came out the gate with it. That means he's not ashamed. He's not ashamed. Why are we? Why is the church ashamed? Man, just ignore Caleb back there. That's one of my friends. He's just crazy, some crazy dude back there. Whatever. Man. All right. So sadly, a lot of times when we feel this way, we feel like drifting away from the church because we feel like nobody has this struggle, right? But here's the reality, and this is going to lead us into point number 2. I don't think you've ever heard it this way. The goal is not to get rid of your drive to have sex, but it's to go to war with it to keep your virginity for your future husband or wife. How many of you guys have ever heard it like that before? Going to war with your virginity. What? You can do that? It's a battle? Some of y'all are like, yeah, bro, it's a battle. What's up? Some of the leaders back there saying, bro, it's hard. Okay? Reading your Bible doesn't, okay, real quick. Reading the Bible does not make your sex drive go away. Like, just real quick. You guys know me. Like, for some of you soldiers, you guys know me. I'm big on soaps. I'm big on reading the Word. How many of you guys, raise your hand if you know I'm big on reading the Word. I'm serious about that stuff. Leaders know it. Everybody knows it. How many of you guys know that even doesn't help? Want to know why? Because we're wired to have sex. Look how Gabby's looking at me right now. She said, he says, bro, we said sex he said sex like 10 times already, and we're in church right now. You can do that? It's like, bro. But man, here's the reality, okay? This is what people believe, and this is a lie that you guys are told, right? Is it says this, and this is lie number 2. Your virginity is no big deal. That's what they'll tell you. That's the first thing you're told. Man, it's no big deal. Right? There's something internally in here that says, man, it's a big deal. But man, if you hear enough people say it over time, you start to go, man, you know what? You guys are right. I'm wrong. My inner witness is wrong. Right? My inner conscience, but God's telling me that's not true. It's what everybody else is saying. Right? See, because the world, what they'll do is they'll offer you slavery in the form of bondage. I'm sorry, slavery in the form of freedom. Right? They'll say, man, you can do whatever you want, man. Don't you want to be cool? Man, those square Christians, bro. Man, God just wants to put all the rules on us, man, and just like, man, keep us, in line. The reality is, how many of you guys know sometimes freedom can mean slavery? Okay, so you said your virginity is no big deal. Want to know why that's a huge lie? How many of you guys know your virginity is probably the greatest gift as you as a human being can give anyone? I bet you've never heard it that way before. The world doesn't say that one. Church doesn't even say it that way. Church just says don't date. Don't have sex. See, it's tough because have you guys ever thought of it this way? Your value of your virginity is not it's not in the virginity itself, it's the battle it took to keep it. Let me tell you why. Let me give you something you may have never thought of in your life. Why do you think, okay, when you hit puberty, how many of you guys know you hit puberty around, 12, kind of that 13 kind of range, right? How many of you guys know that's when you kind of develop some of those desires to have sex? Well, man, has anybody ever asked this question? Why do I have desires to have sex maybe 10, maybe 15 years before I'm even able to get married? That doesn't even make sense. That's not fair, right? Like, man, I'd get married if I could, but I can't. So what am I supposed to do for the next 15 years? Isn't that like that's like, anybody ever thought of that? Like, I know Matt thought of it. He's looking at me like, man, he's hot at me right now. He's going, bro, what's up? Why are you going to put me on blast? But here's the reality. We're given a sex drive, a sexual desire, long before we're able to get married and be able to actually do anything with it, so that it actually cost us something to give it to our future husband and wife. How many of you guys know gift, right? Gifting is in the value and the sacrifice that you took to hold on to it till you gave to someone else, right? How many of you guys know that when your parents give you guys a gift, there's some money that needs to be saved up. There needs to be some money that's put aside. There needs to be a sacrifice that's, they have to go to the store and find it. Man, how many of you guys have ever seen that movie Jingle All the Way? Man, you seen my boy, he woke up late, my boy Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay? And he had to go find the Turbo Man. He had to fade, I can't think of his name for the death of me. He had to fade Sinbad like 5 times throughout the whole movie just to get that Turbo Man, that one Turbo Man, to his kid. How many of you guys know that's what it is? That's a battle for your virginity. And so, here's the deal. How many of you guys know that the world doesn't teach this at all, right? How many of you guys know that instead of fighting to keep your virginity, the world teaches you to fight to give it up? They'll use different connotations. They'll use movies. They'll use TV shows. They'll say, man, if you really love somebody, that's what you'll give up. You'll give it up too soon. Instead of saying, if you really love your future wife or husband, even though you don't know them yet, I'll preserve it for them. I'll wait my whole life for them. Right? But instead, they got to get us to cheapen our value of our virginity, so we'll give it up for way less than it's worth. How many of you guys know I love comic books? I love comic books. And so, how many of you guys know, like, I'm kind of ashamed, but kind of not, and I'll explain why in a second. I buy comic books sometimes, like super rare ones, like ones you're not supposed to be able to get anymore, for a really expensive amount of money. Like, that's what I'm into. I collect comic books. Okay, Leah's smiling at me. She's saying, what a nerd, what a square, right? But here's the deal. How many of you guys know, I wasn't going to bring it today, because I'm sorry, I love you guys, but I don't trust you guys. And if I explain, how much this thing's worth, you guys, I know it's not making it back to my Jeep. So here's the deal. How many of you guys know I love Black Panther? I have a Black Panther keychain. I have Black Panther shirts. I was going to actually wear one today. Oh, you already put it up on the screen? So I have this one comic, okay? It's called Fantastic Four issue 52. It's a 52nd issue of Fantastic Four. Now, it's not really good for a Fantastic Four issue, except for the fact that it's the first appearance of Black Panther. Now, how many of you guys know if you get the first appearance of any comic book character, it's lit. Like, that's expensive. It's hard to find. You got to track them down and all of that stuff. Now, how many of you guys know, you guys can look it up online right now, that comic right there, that single issue, that 24, however many pages is in there, is worth $1,800. 1,800 spanking bucks. Like, big money. Look to your neighbor and say, it's big money. Right? Sometimes I've even seen it sold for like up to $3,000. Okay? He said, bro, my tuition. Jeremy, what's up with the offering? See, I won't give that up. See? Oh, that's the next part of my message. You watch out. Okay, so here's the point. Is that you guys want to know how much I got that for, though? Does anybody want to just shoot out a guess? Somebody just yell one out. $1,200. I'm not going to lie, you're not close. Here's the deal. How many of you guys know I got it for $250? $250. How is that possible? Some of you guys are looking at me. It's in good condition too. Natalia's seen it, right? This thing is actually some of my friends from my old church, they've seen it. They saw it last night. One of them was looking through it right now and said, "Oh man, he didn't even care for it," right? Actually, the next point in my sermon. But here's the deal: is that you see, it was worth so much more. See, but the person who sold it to me was willing to give it up for like not even a quarter, an eighth of what it was even worth. That's what the world teaches us to do. To give up our virginity, the thing that we have, the gift that we have, that's, man, more valuable than anything we could buy for someone. And we're willing to give it up for almost free. Right? And so we do this because we're surrounded by a bunch of people who man, want to give us peer pressure. They want to lie to us, right? They want to make us feel dumb for holding on to it. They'll call us things like priest or nun, that kind of thing, right? Who's ever been called something like that before? They're in the back, they're going, hey, no. And so, man, how many of you guys know that the reason why they peer pressure you guys is because it worked on them? See, because they sure came to peer pressure, right? And so when hurt people, they expect to get the same results. And so, man, it's like this. The reality is, the deepest aspect of this is that they're just people who've already lost the trophy of great value, and they can't like stand to even watch somebody else still holding on to their purity, still doing something right, still not succumbing to the peer pressure, still holding on to it for their future husband and wife. So, I remember last Christmas, who was there when we had the scavenger hunt? How many of you guys know it was a bloodbath? A lot of the people graduated, but how many of you guys know it was look at Sierra. She was like, man, she was on it. That's actually what I was going to talk about. And so we had this crazy scavenger hunt for some of you guys that weren't there, and how many of you guys know it was like Amazing Race status? Like, you had to find a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of random stuff. Now, how many of you guys know that we made certain things so specific that if you did one thing off, then it was over, right? And I just remember that Alexis and her group got there first, sprinting, right? And yeah, Natalia was in there too. And So they come up to me and they're like, we finished first, right? And so I'm looking over all of them, but see, one of them says that you have to take a picture with a clock. See, they took a picture of a clock, right? And they were hot, like they were fierce. Like Alexis looking at me, her face was red, her eyes were big, the typical, like, if you guys have ever seen Alexis mad, she starts to get like her head's about to explode. Like I had never seen, like, and it's just like, man, I didn't know whether to ask, like, hey man, like, do you want to go back and try again? Or are you cool? Like, sometimes, how many of you guys have ever heard me say that? Are you cool? Right? And so, she was really upset. Natalia was upset. She was trying to tempt me to pretty much let her win, and like always. And I'm just kind of like, that's not fair to everyone else. And how many of you guys know that Mateo comes in light speed? He's checking everything. And so basically, Mateo comes in and he's happy. He's talking trash to Alexis. They have this thing going on, like this little sibling rivalry, even though they're not siblings. Basically, what ends up happening is, it turns out Mateo gets the clock one, so everybody's upset. Everyone's losing it in Alexis and Natalia's group. But then they find out that they were supposed to do a video of them singing a song, but they only got the recording. And so Mateo and them were upset, but after that, you just see Alexis, she's completely fine after that. She's like, oh, okay, cool. And then I said, man, like, what's wrong with you, right? Sometimes I just have to ask her, like, girl, what's wrong with you, right? And she was just like, well, I'm just happy Mateo didn't win. But you see, that's the reality. That's what the world will tell you lies, right? Because it's the lies that they received and they fell prey to. And so what they'll do is they'll say, man, as long as you don't win, I'm not tripping, right? Ooh, it's 11:03. Okay, so lie number 3, okay? And this one is going to be the one I probably go in on the most because it's something that like isn't get taught a lot in church when it should be the thing that's taught the most is lie number 3, sex doesn't affect me. Okay? Now I want you guys to read this scripture right here. This blows my mind. Okay? So he says, run from sexual run from sexual sin, and it's exclaimed like it's like it would be like Paul going, run from sexual sin, run from it. He's serious, bro. Like, you know what I mean? And so look what he says after that, though. Then I would imagine that Paul, like, he starts to kind of like talk like with his inside voice. He goes, no other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. For sexual immorality, that's sex outside of marriage, is a sin against your own body, right? How many of you guys have ever heard the lie? Sex is only physical. It's only physical. We're just having a good time. Those church people want to ruin all our fun. Man, who wrote the Bible anyway, right? And it's like, man, how many of you guys know that, man, sex is like probably the most spiritual thing, one of the most spiritual things you'll ever do on this earth? Let me break it down for you guys. You see, God said this. This is another thing he said in chapter 1. So this is a big deal from the get. He's trying to tell us how we're wired. He says, so God created human beings in his own image. Right? Now, what does he mean by this? Well, here's the deal. Every other living being on earth is only like made of like matter, of physical, like they have physical, man, I'm dying today. Physical attributes, right? But we're the only beings on earth, okay? And this is because we're made in God's image. That is body, soul, and spirit, okay? So how many of you guys know when animals have sex or when plants reproduce, it's simply them just following their natural design. But how many of you guys know that when we just kind of have sex like freely, like there's not only like a natural connection, like physical connection, right? There's a spiritual connection. How many of you guys knew that? Raise your hand if you didn't know that. Oh man, you guys are some theologians in here, man. I didn't expect that. Now watch this. It says here, at the beginning, God created Adam and Eve, right? And so what happens is he performs the first wedding of all time right here. Look what he says. He says this. So he makes Eve, right? And then he, basically he gives Eve over to Adam. And look what he says. He says, man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. But then see, later on, right, it goes all the way later on to when Jesus is around, and he says this, and he gives a little bit more context because some people want a divorce, and look what he tells them. He says, this explains why a man leaves his mother and father and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one, since they are no longer two, but one. Do you guys see that? It says that, man, when two people have sex, it's not just physical. Two people are becoming one because it was made in the context of marriage. See, but when you have sex just like with someone you're not married to, it says you still become one. That doesn't change. You still become one in spirit, right? You guys still have this unity. That's why, man, when there's weddings, how many of you guys know, you guys have ever heard kind of the vows? In sickness is in hell, and better or worse, till death do us part. See, sex was designed for someone that you committed your whole life to. So what happens when you have sex with someone that you didn't commit your whole life to? Let's see what happens. So Paul's talking to this church in Corinthians. Now, Corinthian church, they struggled because what they did was sex was like a normal part of like their regular like culture. Like they had like prostitutes and stuff, right? And like that was regular. Like oh, like well, yeah, well, like you guys want to like it'd be like 2017, like we're shooting pool or something, or we're playing video games. Hey, you guys want to just go like see what's up with the prostitute? Like that's what they would do. Like it was regular, everyday part of life. Dinner's over. Hey, you guys want to see what's up with the prostitutes? They even had prostitutes in their old temples, okay? So Paul comes to them and he goes, dude, what are you guys doing? And so he goes, don't you realize that if a man joins himself to a prostitute, he becomes one body with her? For the scriptures say, two are united in one. So what happens is Paul brings out this new idea that, man, it doesn't matter if you're married to them. What happens is that you can become one flesh. You can become united with them in spirit and in your soul, and you can get something what I call, or what a lot of churches call, a soul tie. Now, some of the symptoms of a soul tie, you connecting yourself with someone you're not married to, these are some of the symptoms, right? Because how many of you guys know this goes a lot deeper than just don't date? Watch this. It says, you have left, so here's one of the symptoms. You've left a relationship, maybe a long time ago, but you still think about the person sometimes obsessively because you can't get them out of your mind. Right? I'm not going to ask anyone to raise their hand and say, man, who here can't get someone out of their mind because they've done things with them. But it says, man, you're not even able to overcome the person no matter how badly they treated you. It doesn't matter how badly they treated you. Right? You find yourself being attracted to people who are who are similar in the way they look or the way they act to the person you were sexually involved with. And the second thing is you take on like their negative personality traits, their struggles, because you guys are now one spirit. Right? So then you start to deal with personality traits you've never even dealt with before, or you never had before. You had sex with the person. These are some examples. I'm just going to read some of these examples for you guys. Okay? You become angry easier about things you didn't even care about prior. You get easily depressed. You're more negative about things when you're usually a positive person. Having a bad attitude and being more rude when you used to be really nice and welcoming, right? Just for no reason. It says you feel more insecure than before, but you can't explain why. You're craving to do drugs despite you never had that craving before. You have crazy thoughts about yourself. You're more anxious, and when in the past you didn't even struggle with those things before. And you may even struggle now with suicide. These are all results of uniting spiritually and emotionally with other people, right? And then the last one, this is the last kind of effect of kind of this soul tie thing that I've been talking about, is that you just naturally feel distant from God. How many of you guys know that when you unite with somebody, especially someone who's not doesn't have a good relationship with God, and you had a good relationship with God, it says that you'll naturally start to drift from your relationship with God. You naturally come and feel condemned because you attach yourself to someone who has no spiritual health, right? And so you start to isolate yourself when you used to be really involved in church before. And so, man, this is a serious topic. This is the tone of this it's not it's not necessarily funny. It's not necessarily empowering, right? Because it's to indicate kind of some of the things that you guys go through every day, some of the things you guys hear, and just so you guys can discover the lie. But here's the last thing. I'm not going to end there. Lie number 4 is this. If I've already had sex, I can't be restored. If I can have Lily and the worship team come up. How many of you guys know that God can deliver you guys from soul ties? How many of you guys know nothing else can do that? How many of you guys know a new relationship can't deliver you from soul ties? How many of you guys know that rom-coms and Twilight can't deliver you guys from soul ties? How many of you guys know that the only person who can give you guys a fresh start is Jesus? He says, anyone who's set free by the Son is free indeed. You want to know what free indeed means? It means free for real. Look what he says in Deuteronomy 30:3. He says, God, your God, will restore everything you lost. He'll have compassion on you, and he'll bring you, and he'll come back and pick up the pieces from all the places where you were scattered. How many of you guys probably in this room right now maybe have done some things, looked at some things, said some things that you're not proud of, and now you're in this room right now and you feel like you're scattered? Maybe you feel like you've given yourself someone and there's pieces of your heart that have gone with each person. And so right now you've got a piece of heart left, a piece of your personality left, a piece of your soul left. Maybe you're in this room and you said, man, I've never done any of these things, but I've never actually formally made a decision to guard my purity, to guard my virginity, to guard this gift that was meant for my husband or wife. And so I just feel like, this is something that's really key. If you fail to prepare in this moment, you prepare to fail. A lot of people, they didn't say, you know what, I'm just going to wake up tomorrow, I'm just going to lose my virginity. See, it's one of those things that happened over time. You didn't grow up thinking, I'm going to lose my virginity. It's something you had to have been taught. But how many of you guys know you guys can unlearn those concepts? How many of you guys know, you can unhinge those soul ties. And so here's what I want to do. I just want to have whatever leaders are in here, what leaders we got in here. And I just want you guys to go ahead and go with, if it's a leader in your guys' mentor group, if it's a leader just kind of around, whoever you kind of feel comfortable with right now, I just want everyone to kind of go to someone right now. And maybe it's a decision you haven't made yet to guard your purity, but maybe it's a soul tie that needs breaking. I just want everyone to go to someone right now. Okay? And so I just want you guys to know that, God's making all things new in this moment. I feel like that's something that some people need to receive right now in this moment, even before they come up, is that God is making all things new right now. He's not waiting till tomorrow. It's not going to be a gradual thing. He's making all things new right now in this moment. So if you want to be made new, if you want a fresh start, or if you want a new thought process, the groups are for you guys.